So, ladies and gentlemen,
Uh-huh.
for those of you that don't know, my name is Sodium Jim, and welcome everybody to episode 4 of the Saltfest. It's not really a weekly thing, it's more of a when I get an idea thing, so there's a few episodes up on my YouTube at the moment, but one question that I've been discussing with people recently, and somebody who I know who's not only knowledgeable, has expressed their opinion vocally on the onlines in recent times, is brother Gillstolemyride, aka the FG Treehouse. Welcome, my friend. How you
Okay.
doing?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for inviting me to talk about this. I am a fighting game competitor, as many of you. I play way too many fighting games for my own sake. I do coaching and I do VOD analysis for anybody that asks, absolutely free, because I want our genre to grow up. No, grow up. Grow up? No,
Yeah.
grow up.
Yeah.
Grow. Just
Yeah.
grow. Just grow, not
Yeah.
grow up. But yeah, so that's it. That is what I do. I have written an article that you can find up there in the chat about why I'm not enjoying fighting games so much and why I think it's I wouldn't say an exclusive problem of new fighting games. No, absolutely, because you can find this sort of behavior that kind of triggers me in all fighting games as well. But there are some reasons why I think it's more prominent in fighting games, and that's in new fighting games, and that's probably what we're going to talk about today overall.
Yeah. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is where, because you're at university, right? Or did I make
Yes,
that up? Yeah.
I'm studying food science at the moment,
Oh, nice.
so it's a pretty interesting subject. But I am in Dundee, is a university, small city, very small city, and
Yeah.
it has 2 universities. So I would say like a good 70% of people are just here in term time, and the rest is seagulls and probably junkies. But yeah, I'm a
um,
university student.
No, because I was always curious because I learned about you originally
Mm-hmm.
when you started doing. Firstly, thank you for the follow, guys. The Dark Bagel and Gaming with Beard, much appreciated. But I first learned about you when somebody retweeted when you were doing when Garrow was reintroduced, shall we say, with better online.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes.
and then you
Yeah,
did this
but
whole initiative basically about Garrow and trying to teach
mhm.
people how to play, and you did a couple of exhibitions and stuff, and that was when I learned about you originally.
Cool, cool.
um
Yeah. Sorry,
no,
you
I
go
was
on.
gonna say, and then one thing that surprised me was that you play a lot of old, like I'm guessing you're in your early 20s because you
No, no.
oh, how old are you? You look super
I'm
young.
30, I'm 32, 33.
Okay, so that answers my question because you look super young. I just assumed you were a university age because you look like you're in your early 20s. My question was
Uh-huh.
basically, if you're so young, how do you know about all these fighting games? But if you're my
No, no,
age, then it
I'm not
makes
that young.
sense because you played them
Yeah,
when they
yeah,
came out. All right.
yeah. Yes, I did play them when they came out. I grew up in arcades, and I basically had only arcade gaming until I was 15, with the exception of an Atari 1200, which, aside from Mr. Postman, is not the most engaging console.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
that's true. Yeah, no, I was that was my question, was basically, if you're so
mm,
young, how do you know about all these games? But
no, I'm
so
a, I'm a boomer in disguise.
um, yeah, so you just grew up playing the old. So you played everything in the arcade.
Yes, my first video game of all time was Street Fighter 2. At 3, on the seaside, we had one of those kiosks,
Oh
that
yeah.
sells like, ice creams and all this stuff. And then they had some arcade cabinets. Now, we were really, really good friends with the guy that owned it. Like, we were like family friends. We had, lunches and dinners all the time. So I was super privileged. Like, I'm talking, I had like a bag of coins at the cab with me, and nobody could touch me, right?
Yeah,
So you don't get a better introduction at an arcade when you're 3.
yeah,
So,
just sitting there
um,
grinding.
yeah, yeah. So basically, I started with Street Fighter 2. I played Blanca because I'm 3 years old and I can mash buttons and
Yeah.
it goes into electricity. That's me sold, right?
I don't think the
Uh,
strategy's changed that much, to be honest with you, with Blanca players over the
Pretty
last
much.
30 years.
I see. I could figure things out early. That's why I coach at 3 already at the shots. No, but like jokes aside, yes, I grew up in this seaside place for like 3 summers. My mom would rent a holiday like house
Hmm.
with my grandma, and they be at the sea, and I would just get my white tan under the
Yep.
kiosk at the arcades, my blue tan in a way. Uh, so yeah, and I've always been so much into fighting games. Overall, there was something that made me compete, and it was just beautiful.
So you actually would enter competitions and stuff as well. It wasn't just.
Well, I started getting into competitions actually very, very late, meaning my first tournament was at 17, I want to say.
Okay.
And that was Battle of Destiny 2008. Wait, try, yeah, 80, no, 19, 19. I was 19 at that time. So because I was living in Italy and I was living in the very south of Italy, so there was no competition
Mm.
with video games in general. Like it was just not a thing. The only scenes, so to speak, that they had was Rome and Milan, and that was like 600, 700 kilometers away.
Yeah.
So not exactly something I could travel to.
So when did you come over to the UK? Was it with for university, or have you been here for a while?
Well, I've been here going 5+ years, so between 5 and 6 years by now.
Okay.
I moved to the UK specifically for university to start with, and with my partner. My partner got a scholarship at the University of Edinburgh. He's archaeologist. I'm not gonna get into the details of that because there's more to archaeology, but just default to
Yeah,
archaeology.
Indiana Jones.
Yes, exactly. Yes, pretty much. So yeah, we came here for that. I wanted higher level education from my high school, basically, and I was delayed into high school for some familiar problems with economy, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to leave. I had to leave the school because my mom couldn't pay a mortgage. We were like 5 years from paying the mortgage, but she wanted to sell the house with no house or property. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So I just,
Well.
stepped up, being a man, as people say, and I just went out of the education. I worked for a few years so we could afford a house. Like I would pay the rent of the place I was working at with my family, so they could pay the house with the money that they had. So yeah, that's why I'm like in university at 32 years old.
Well, I mean, better late than never, bro. If you're gonna start,
Yeah.
at least
Mhm.
you're getting it now and you can.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so how did you get onto like Garrow and King of Fighters and what was your
Well,
yeah?
it was in arcades to start with, like the casual experience, like the first exposure of all these games, all the KOF series, all the Street Fighter games, Karnov. Italy was booming with arcades in the 90s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I lived in a small town of like 17,000 people, 17,
Yeah.
and we had not even kidding 20 plus arcades. So it was just fantastic. So we would just go from arcade to tour them all. Like literally every day we just go around to see if there was a new cab out, and then we just spend the day in arcades. There was almost nothing else aside from football when you're a kid, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it. So it was football and arcades, especially in the summer.
So if you were
Uh,
to say your top three favorite fighting games, what would you say they are?
Uh, oof. Okay. Well, Third Strike is the first one. Like, there's
Mm-hmm.
no, there's no contest there. Absolutely. Then most likely would say Garu.
Mm-hmm.
And let me open my page so I remember all the ones that I play, because this is like how hard it gets when
Well, this is
you play
there's a
so many.
yeah. I was gonna say this, and there's a specific reason why I've asked you that question because I know
Mhm.
the answers to it,
I,
but
I would say Samurai Showdown too. So it would be Third Strike first place, Garu second place, Samurai Showdown third place,
is that
and
the
that's like.
The new Samurai
The second.
Showdown.
No,
Oh, the
no,
second
no,
one.
no. The
Okay.
number two. I like the new Samurai Showdown, but it has some quality of life problems. The game itself is really, really good. I believe is the best game of this generation when it
Oh,
comes to
wow.
2D fighters. Because Tekken has done absolutely amazing, in my opinion, to
Mm-hmm.
keep the spirit of Tekken while kind of adapting to the new. Everyone needs to get into this genre kind of philosophy, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my top three, absolutely.
And the reason why I asked you that question, because I knew Third Strike was your favorite, is
Uh-huh.
all three of those fighting games are before the turn of the millennium. So we've had
Uh,
20 years
uh-huh.
since
Yes.
then.
Hmm.
Leading into our topic, Gil, why don't you like modern day fighting games? I mean, maybe that's a bit of a leading question because maybe you do, but
Yeah.
what
Okay,
what let's
so
talk about it. What
mhm.
when did because so let me just put the article again in chat for people that have just tuned in. Gil
Mhm.
recently did an article which you can find there on his blog. Please give it a follow, where he's
Thank you.
talking about what it is about modern fighting games that he's not necessarily a fan of. When did
So
post Street Fighter 4? Sorry, because I'm guessing Street
uh
Fighter 4 was the last game that you felt didn't have this sort of problem.
no, well, the fact is, I should make another article by itself talking about Street Fighter 4, right? Because when people read my article, they know I like the game and they assume that I'm presenting the game with no flaws. Street Fighter 4 has a lot of flaws as well, but I think it's an enjoyable game and it doesn't reward different approaches. What my problem with new fighting games is mainly is that there is a reward overall generally for offense that is much bigger and much more immediate than defense. And in Street Fighter 4 and the other games I mentioned, you can play any style as long as you can make it work, as long as you can find your dimension in the game, you have freedom, which is
Yeah.
what I enjoy in fighting games. So Street Fighter 4 can be played very offensively, can be played very defensively. You have characters like, I don't know, Viper or Gen or Dudley, which I play, that can ruin you of one touch into a 50-50 into GG's, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not the problem. That's something that you find in new fighting games as well. And also you have characters like your classic Guile, your Sagat,
Ryu.
that they can, can be slowing the pace down. So there's something for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, what I found in new fighting games is that for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the influx of new players. I don't know if it's the style of the new games that I think reward this immensely. People are less willing to play an adaptive game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it goes to all levels. Like a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, few people, when they read the article, it's like, oh no, just play at a high level, and you're not gonna find this problem. And I said, well, I placed top 8 in some show when it came out, right? The first tournament that they did in Europe, I believe, was Celtic Throwdown, unless I'm mistaken. And I made the top 5, and I had close matches there. So I had a decent level there. I had decent level in Street Fighter 4, like I beat very good players. So and even like Mortal Kombat, when I started with Mortal Kombat, admittedly was on PC because I never know where to buy fighting games
No,
in this
no.
era,
I did
right?
the same
You
thing.
you yeah, exactly. Like when you look at different games, like Tekken 7 came out, Tekken PlayStation, right? And then it was not the answer. So when Mortal Kombat came out, I went like top 10 with Scarlet, nonetheless, in
Mm.
like not even 2 weeks. I think like 8 days, I was like top 10, right? So I was playing people that were decent, not like amazing, because of course it's not a tournament setting, but decent, not your new player.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a question of the level. It's a question of, in my opinion, new games having a way to reward you for enforcing your game plan that is much more prominent than older games. Now, you can do, your classic scenario. You have a jump in, you do 60%, 40%, 50% of the jump in, and then you have some sort of okay 50-50 into GG, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a thing that you can do absolutely fine in Street Fighter 4 as well. You can do it in third strike. Hell, Chan does it from crouching medium kick into
Mm-hmm.
super. It's like,
Yeah.
there's no. But the problem is that there's a lot of intricacies behind these scenarios in older games that I think are missing from newer games because of lowering
The
the
skill
skill
barrier.
entrance level. Yeah. So things such, as, I don't know, kata throw, buffer systems, it confirms, all of these things become much less relevant in newer games for a lot of the player base. Not everyone, of course,
Yeah.
but a lot of the player base. Because once they land the jump in, a lot of the character specifics, all these intricacies are gone. So they don't need to play the neutral game
No.
as much as other games. And when you do play an offensive games, having less defensive options, it is easier for you to land that, overhead or low and go party
Yeah.
onto your opponent.
It's so you mentioned briefly as well. I mean, I agree with everything you've just said, and we'll go into it in more detail. But you mentioned briefly as
Mhm.
well about people not. It's not rewarding the adaptive game. Do you want to explain briefly what you mean by that, just for people that?
I think like even before the rewarding part, because when you talk about, rewarding, you're talking about competition. Even before that, you actually have an element of fun that, in my opinion, has been lost. Because if I posted a couple of videos on the article of people that just refuse to adapt. And that is fine if it's your singular experience. It's like, okay, 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10 people play like that. Fine. I just play the other eight, and this has some necessary evil I have to go through. I streamed like for 2 hours for Mortal Kombat or Them Fighting Herds is another big one of just untiring.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, you're like, I can do this in a training mode. I can set, especially with, now new games have like 6, 7, 8 slots for recording. I can have 8 different recordings of
Champions.
anti-airing, and I
Yeah.
can just set my drill. But that is a one-player mode. So a lot of the experience is defaulting into a one-player mode. And a easy solution for this would be to just play people in sets. Asking in Discord is like, oh, I'm trying to learn this game, guys. Can you give me like a long set? I really want to learn, I don't know, Collector, because you're
Yeah.
playing Collector, right? It's not the most common character, and is a very tricky character that can give you a lot of trouble if you don't know him.
Mhm.
So the problem with this is there is a very small pool of players that are super mega dedicated to the game, and you can catch them. You can play these ones, right?
Mhm.
The moment you expand in the community, nobody wants to play the game. There's a lot of people that are there 24/7 discussing every single aspect of the game. The moment you ask them to play, there's nobody there. There's nobody available, right?
Yeah.
And I believe that a lot of the time, this is because it's not fun to play the game,
Yeah.
and people are getting deluded. At least I am,
Yeah. I
or
mean,
disillusioned. Yeah, sorry.
no, no. I mean, yeah. I agree. Again, so that's part of the reason why I wanted you on. I'm gonna play a little bit of devil's advocate at some point later on, but for the most
Of
part,
course.
I read because I don't want it just to. I don't want this just to be me and you being like, and another thing, and another
Yeah, no, no,
thing.
absolutely, absolutely.
But I do agree with you. Um, Definitely, especially when it comes to anti-air simulators and the
Mhm.
risk reward for offense versus defense. But we'll break that down a little bit more later on. So where do you think was like the turning point when it came to fighting games that we started to see this trend that it was like so just to give a little bit of an insight for those of you that are new, so younger than 30, shall we say, there was a big period between like I would say early 2000s and maybe like 2010 where we didn't really get any fighting games.
Yeah.
We got a few made like Street Fighter 4. Obviously the big meme is '09 now, so right towards the end of the decade we started getting fighting games, but there was a massive gap where we just didn't have anything. It's not like nowadays where you've got like 8 or 9 different big Evo games. It was literally just you'd have a Soul Calibur, you'd have a Tekken, potentially you might not even have both. You might have one or the other. You'd have a Street Fighter, And that's
But
about it, really.
even that, the last Street Fighter came out in '99.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah,
1999 to
we were playing
2008,
Third
there's like
Strike.
9 years. There's nothing else,
Yeah.
right?
So, where do you think was this? Do you think it was a situation where fighting game companies were like, hang on a minute, we want to get people to play these games? Do you think it was a conscious decision? Do you think, it was maybe a change in the market that made people realize, actually we've got to play this game, make these games more accessible? What do you think, if there was a catalyst, where do you think that it occurred?
Well, if you look at fighting games and you look at the biggest brand, right, you have undeniably Street Fighter, Tekken, and Mortal Kombat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is already niche. Like you're not gonna go, even if you go in the streets, you might struggle to find everyone that knows Tekken but like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, especially from the experience of the early 90s, the boom of Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat change the perspective. Like people that haven't lived this can't quite understand. It was revolutionary in the real sense of it. Like you would go and buy produce in Italy, at least, at your fruit and vegetables reseller. They would have a cap in the back. You go at the pharmacy, there were caps. Like it's crazy like this. So you do have this huge brand that people still feed off, right? You can see many people with like Street Fighter or Tekken shirts or Mortal Kombat shirts, and they're quote unquote casuals, right?
Yeah.
They just like the brand, they like the game, the story, the character design, and that's absolutely great. But from there to actually making the boom to make this a self-sustaining environment economically, especially with the rising of esports with other genres such as FPS, RTS, and so on. There is a big disconnect between the brand that you have and the amount of players and impact and sales that you have. Like, even though it's going better recently because the environment is changing, fighting games used not to break the million of copies, right?
No.
Unless you were one of the super big threes, and even then, people like you would struggle. Like Third Strike, that in my opinion is the best fighting game ever made, struggled to break the 500,000 copies because of different reasons. Because there were no, the Street Fighter 2 characters were missing. It was a new generation, a new system, blah blah blah. That story.
Yeah.
But in general, I think that the big change was noticing the power of the brand, especially with the release of Street Fighter 4. When the Street Fighter 4 came out, you had some sort of like new spark of, but man, Street Fighter is back. We haven't heard from Street Fighter. For some people, it was 15 years. For some people, it was alpha. Some people still didn't know there was Street Fighter 3. That's how bad it went, right? So they're like, we have a new phenomenon that is back. Whether it's like my dad used to play this, like, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and it made a boom. It made an actual boom. Like Street Fighter 4 was the catalyst for so many fighting games to go back into the market.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the motivation. The big brand being there, but still wanting to capture a bigger audience because the potential is clearly there.
But Street Fighter 4 ultimately proved to be quite a difficult game to play. I don't think it was the first one. I mean, you're right. It was definitely the catalyst for this new wave of fighting games. People saw the hype, etc., etc. But it was still like you had FADCs, you still had one frame links. Execution-wise, it was still quite difficult. Because I've been thinking about it recently. I can't really think when, like, the first of these, shall we say, new wave of fighting games. Because back in the day, right? Let's give it a bit of perspective, and you can correct me on this. But
yeah,
we didn't have any resources when we were learning fighting games when we were kids. There was we didn't have. We didn't have the internet until our late teens, at the very least, right?
Yeah.
So, and even then, the only one I remember really was GameFAQs.
Yeah, in arcades, your resource was the random guy that would literally turn out, know everything about the game.
Yeah.
Or like one day smoking like Murati Gold for like, I don't know, 20 hours, and then disappear into the nothingness.
Yeah, and you
Like,
never
this
see
is
him
like
again.
one of the legendary figures of arcades, was this guy that would literally have every single Mortal Kombat fatality in his head, right? And then just disappear the day after. So
Yeah,
that was your moment to literally feel your knowledge
yeah.
encyclopedia, because you're not gonna get a second chance.
No, because you didn't exactly. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have literally any. There was nothing. There was no resource.
Yeah.
Then, in our early 20s, that's when the internet started to kick off and YouTube started to become a thing. And even the company. We used to have the. I don't know if you remember the massive thick guides they used to do with the releases
Yes.
of games as well.
Yeah, yeah.
They'd do those, but then those would be out of date like within a week or 2 weeks. So. Old fighting games, firstly, in terms of resources, were super limited. So you only could really play them if you really liked them or you knew about them. Like you said with Street Fighter, the only reason I knew about Street Fighter 3 was because I remember I went into, at that time, there was a game shop called Electronic Boutique. And I just went in there and I hadn't even heard of it. And I saw the cover and I was like, holy shit, there's a Street Fighter 3. And it literally, that I didn't see any marketing for it. And I used to get all the magazines, everything, and I didn't even know the game had come out. So
one thing I wanted to mention about Street Fighter 3. Remember I said we had like 20 plus arcades in this little town. Street Fighter 3 never came in. So one day we went out of town for like a trip with my mom and so on, and my mom had to, I don't know, get coffee or something, and next door of the cafe that she was at, there was an arcade. So I just went to peep, because curiosity, and I saw Street Fighter, and I literally derailed the whole thing. And I'm like, I'm not doing anything. Street Fighter 3 is here. It's a new thing. Just leave me here for 2 hours, and then maybe I can enjoy the family trip.
Yeah, we'll do something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's exactly it. I went into EB, and then I was like, I went to Turbo too, but this is before Turbo, I think, because this is 99 by Street. No, Third Strike came out in 99, so I can't even remember when the first.
96, I believe, is a new generation, either 96 or 97.
Yeah, so I mean, this is even before 1999. There was no, like I said, no resource, and you just played it. Training mode, for the most part, was fairly limited, maybe outside of Guilty Gear, which had quite an extensive record function and all that stuff. But my point is, you'd play them because you loved them, right?
Yes.
And then they were so much more difficult. You didn't have, again, you didn't have 4,000 hit combos. You didn't used to have massive comeback mechanics really outside. A few games had super meter, but there wasn't something like Street Fighter 3. You had your top tier characters and you had the universal parry mechanic, but that was only something that people that were really good would use, right?
Yeah. And another thing is God bless dry characters. Bison in Street Fighter 4, Ralph in KOF 98. KOF 97, I could beat so many people at the arcade doing literally 4 things. Jump. No. That's already specials. Because I was a kid. 97, I was 9, right? 9, 10. So, no, it was jump D, crouch D, jump D into crouch D. So the usual Street Fighter jump into sweep. Which is already imagine at 9, I was bringing concepts from different fighting games. Galactica Phantom is Super Punch because nobody knew how to deal with it. And is normals. So stand C, crouch C, and C plus D. Those are still 20 years later, Ralph 101, how to play the character. So, it wasn't combos and confirms and common grabs, all of that. It was just literally the most basic things. So there was already ways to play the game very, very basically and be effective with it.
Yeah, but then again as well, when you did reach that high level, there was... and I don't mean to disparage people that are good at fighting games these days, but I feel like when you were at the peak of a fighting game, like CVS 2, say, for example.
Oh, yeah.
CVS 2 or Marvel 2 or a game like that. When you were at the peak of that game...
Mechanics galore.
Exactly. That's when you start seeing the depth and you start seeing the layers. And I feel like it was much more difficult to be good at these old games than it is to be good. And again, I'm not disparaging people that are good at games these days, because it's still hard to be at the top level. Because even though I'm saying that there's no resources, it is hard to be good at fighting games these days because there is so many resources. You know, you can't. If you're good, people are going to have like thousands of your matches on YouTube to watch you and analyze you. So, you know, the resource thing is obviously a blessing and a curse. But the point I just really wanted to make is that fighting games, when you were younger, when we were younger anyway, you felt like every win was earned. And every time you lost, when I was a kid, I never felt like, oh man, I just got, unless it was like the absolute top tier stuff, and I used to get really salty. When I lost, I always felt like it was my fault. Always. I would never be like, oh man, this guy just used, one of the 83 different wake up mechanics, and, or he didn't, he used X Factor level 3, or, one of these things, and just, cheesed me out. If I lost, it was always my fault. And I always used to be able to look at a loss and say, actually, I can see exactly why I lost that match. It was so much easier just to see, because you were just playing, it was you versus the other guy. Obviously, there was moves, and there was special moves and supers and blah, blah, blah. Fine. But you can always look back and say, oh, it's because I didn't confirm this, or I dropped this combo, or, it was so rare that it was something out of your control, like in quotation marks.
It's because also like the concept of guessing was there, but wasn't the ultimate bane of some situations, right? Yeah. I have had the biggest arguments with GBVS because they kept on saying, oh, the matchup is not bad if you guessed right. If you touch me 3-4 times, this matchup, that was specifically La Diva Ferry, is not unwinnable. You just need to touch me 3 or 4 times. Now, give me any character in any fighting games where you have a stray hit 4 times and their opponent doesn't die. That's not relevant to the matchup. Is relevant to
fighting games.
Dying because you lost the interaction. But when the interaction is press the button, try to read when I press the button at 70% screen range, and then get your game going from there, you know that the matchup is limited.
Yeah.
But aside that, in general, I think the problem that there is a lot of misconception that started with Street Fighter 4, especially during the 2012 era space of the game, and the Street Fighter 5 transition. A lot of people at low level, not low level, but even like advanced to, not top level, will blame option select. And there's a big misconception about option selects. If you're a beginner, especially, you think the option select cover every single situation in Street Fighter 4. Mm-hmm. That is absolutely untrue. The best option select, the most advanced option select, which will be Momochi Tech, which is basically an auto tech, auto focus, auto DP tech, add the counters, right? They were counters, and there's like some brainiac shit and execution, super heavy shit, right? I had to watch the video, not exaggerating, when he broke it down 8 times to wrap my head around it, right? That it gets really, really complicated, but the people lose focus on the counters that there are. So on a classic option select, right, the most easy stupid option select, jump forward, heavy kick, and ultra option select to cover the backdash, there's so many ways to defeat it. But people that didn't understand this go wrapped into blaming option selects for the losses, and for whatever reason they stuck. So I still have this argument like years after Street Fighter 4, and I'm like, Street Fighter 4 is not where the option select originated. Like, T-Hawk literally climbed from shit tier to top 1 in the game if played in a certain way due to option select, because every time you block a jab, it can option select SPD or Tomahawk. So simply to beat the character, you don't have to be there, right? So, and that's Super Turbo. That's a 1995 game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that generally the guessing is becoming way too way too simple, way too flip a coin and just deal with it. And that's part of the problem as well, as to part of the solution to give worse player, I'm sorry, a playing field with better ones. The problem is you also have everything else. So this is only relevant when they're in, but most of the time the worst player are not gonna get in. You know what I mean?
No. I mean, I think that's what fights. As you've been talking, and I've been thinking as well. And Fight Zone said it as well. I think maybe that was the key turning point, and what you've just said as well is from Street Fighter 4 to Street Fighter 5, there was a lot of mechanical changes designed for, as you've just said, and this isn't. We're not taking shots at anybody because obviously there's layers to everything in life, right? There's beginners and there's experts, but I think Street Fighter 5 was the first of these like mega in like AAA games that really started stuff like crush counters, you know, stuff like the priority system in regards to normals. They changed everything because they wanted to make it more accessible for that newer player. You know, removal of option select, stuff like that, because they wanted the new player to play and be on a similar level to the pros. You know, they didn't want, because what would happen is you'd in fighting games, and I've said this to everybody, if you want to be good at fighting games, you have to be prepared to get smoked. That's the number one thing, because everybody who plays fighting games gets absolutely destroyed when they first start playing. No exceptions. It doesn't matter if you're me or if you're Sonic Fox. Every single person that picks up a fighting game when they first play it is going to get absolutely destroyed, because that's just how they work. And whether or not you're going to be good at fighting games is what if you take that loss and think, right, I don't want to lose again, or you think, you know what, F it, I can't be bothered, I'm not going to play anymore. Those are the two mindsets. If you just want to give up and just play casually, then that's absolutely fine, and you'll just be at a certain level. But it is those people that get smoked and think, you know what, F that, I'm not going down like that. They're the people that eventually, play more and eventually become better at fighting games. But
what I say to people that are coach and start to develop a teaching kind of relationship with, is you have to enjoy losing.
Yeah.
Or the other way around, hate it so much that you actually do the hard work. Whether you enjoy it and you're like, yo, that was fun, I got smoked, I need to understand what is happening. Or, oh man, that was shit, I really hated my time, I really need to know how to prevent that. The hard work is the bottom line. And this is the central problem of the new era of fighting game, the new generation. We have sold lies to get people in, right? The biggest spotlight, aside from getting Shaquille O'Neal to play Street Fighter, I don't know why, but celebrity game bot, is the whole Lupe Fiasco stunt, right? We have sold that. We have sold like the biggest lie ever. We're like, oh man, Lupe P picked up the game. See you in 1 week. We're going to make an exhibition. And then he smokes the best player in the world in that game. That's clearly a lie. You don't have to be like super into fighting games to understand that doesn't happen organically, right? Yeah. And that's the way that they wanted to bring people in, which as a business, I understand. That's what business do, right? This is a big stunt. It's like, oh, we're going to get a celebrity to smoke up the player, and then we're gonna get people to be like, yo, I can do that in 1 week, I can be top level. And they're starting with huge price pots and shit. So that's how I think we went wrong big time, because in my opinion, fighting games are 99% hard work. Like the whole like talent thing that people throw out might be only genetics relating to reactions, right? That's science. Anything else is literally breaking the game in a positive way to figure out everything you need to know. But it's hard work. You can't escape that. And of course, you can't say as a business, oh, we're gonna push this message and we're gonna involve the community into actually teaching, right? And reward the community for actually teaching to grow the game, because that's not what business do. That's not a short revenue good strategy, so to speak. So they couldn't sell this message, in my opinion. They just got people in. People started playing these games. They got smoked regardless, and they started leaving it. And then the people that actually stuck with it were faced with the harsh reality.
Yeah, I mean, so that leads on to the next point. I guess, I mean, in chat, if you have any questions or any things that you want to say that you feel like will help us illuminate anything, then by all means say stuff. But I think that leads into the point of, so if we examine, so we'll use Mortal Kombat and them's fighting herds as two examples because they're the ones that you've used in your article, and we'll do Grand Blue as well. What is it about these three games that you, I know we've touched upon it briefly at the start about what it is in general about fighting games that you don't like. We were talking about risk reward and stuff, but what is it in general about these three games that, I mean, obviously people can read the article if you want for a bit more examination, but what is it about these games that epitomizes your idea of this isn't right?
Okay, so, well, we start with Mortal Kombat, and before, I very quickly touch on 10 before we go into 11, right?
Okay.
A lot of people I've read on Twitter and so on, they used to love 10 because 10 is a high pressure, eye pressure, eye lockdown game with a lot of very hard to react 50-50s, where a lot of your ways out, not always, but sometimes rely on getting out with armor, right? So there is a lot of pressure on the defender. And personally, I did not enjoy the game because I could not play my way. And I was playing Ferrator as well, so it's not like the fastest character to lock people in and so on. But moving on to 11, I actually really enjoyed 11 when I started playing the game. Now, playing Scarlet, it means that the game that I'm playing is highly focused on spacing, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what she does. She zones people out, she spaces, and so on. Now, the problem started when I realized that some of my spacing options actually did not work as intended. Standing 3 can be jumped over for whatever reason. Sometimes, not all the time, but it's not reliable as much. Forward 2 is an upward swing motion that actually does not anti-air.
No.
So my actual anti-airs were down 2 and down 4 of all things. Like, I made a whole video about Scarlet down 4ing things, and people are like, no, that's not a thing. And I'm like, yeah, it's actually a thing. Go try it. And people refuse to believe it. And I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm streaming it. And for whatever reason, they decided they don't work. But yeah, in general, I figured out that with Scarlet, unless I had the D2 ready, it was much more convenient to either jump 4 or jump 1 to air-to-air people, right? And I started noticing how much I would do it, especially being a zoner. People don't want to play the slow game of getting in, especially because she has a teleport, and they have to react to that, they have to punish that, and so on. And I started noticing that most of the time that I spent was doing that, air-to-airing people or anti-airing people, especially with, in Mortal Kombat, jumping force being so bloody strong, right? So I realized that people did not want to adapt to me. So I started doing that. I started having success, and then I started getting bored of the success. I'm like, either I play very good games in tournament. Because when I went to Celtic Throwdown, I got absolutely smoked, right? Well, I got like one round of Sonic Fox, but he smoked me, of course. And then was, what's his name? The guy that does Electronic Dojo, Justin Xavier. He smoked me right? And most of what he did with Raiden was teleport behind me and punish me. And as an idiot, I tried to wait for him to jump at me, and it was not happening. And by the time I realized I lost, and I'm like, oh shit, the experience is so different, right? Now, of course, I played other local tournaments and I did better and so on. But generally, I was like, this is so different from what I'm playing online. In Them Fighting Herds, I also found this problem with anti-airs. Now, you started with Tianor, remember?
Yeah, and you smoked
and the moment we played, like, The moment we played, like after 3 matches, I'm like, man, you're just jumping. And I'm like, yeah, I'm newer to the game. And I'm like, fair enough. If you're new to the game, you don't know, what your buttons are, what extends, what doesn't extend, all this stuff that it becomes more apparent after. But then, like, I started playing this game, and 2 weeks in, actually, at Tiano, they would smoke me because she's basically Magneto, right?
Yeah.
She's basically like Magneto in a pony form. They would smoke me, and then I started. I'm like, okay, what do I do? Anti-air. And I started anti-air. I did not have the Arizona loops, which are crazy to do, like, 40, 60%. Because, the stomps, because they are, like, mechanically heavy, and I was playing other games. But I started anti-airing, and I started beating these people that were super way better than me, right? And I'm like, how am I doing? Anti-airing. They're refusing to adapt.
Yeah.
So, but why would you adapt when you touch 60% into that? And that's like a freaking common occurrence, so to speak. In GBVS is a bit different because in GBVS jumping is not that relevant, I would say.
No.
But it's because, in my opinion, you have a lot of neutral skips. Well, it's not like my opinion. There are a lot of neutral skips, but a lot of them are really, really good. Like super fast, plus on block, counter it, wall jump. What's it called? Wall bounce.
Stuff, yeah.
Wall bounce. Yes, exactly. Right. So plus fast, traveling forward, counter it on block. Plus on block is spaced well, and when it's minus, you can DP or you can spot dodge, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of these moves started taking the decision factor out of players. If you have something so good, right, you're gonna use it because it doesn't carry as much risk as I don't know, whiffing something, right? First of all, it's not gonna whiff because it's like it travels almost full screen.
Yeah.
Right. And I started applying these very like basic concepts of Street Fighter. When you play Rogue, is basically the same, right? Safe on block, dashes. They don't do like stupid damage, but they're safe, they're fast, they travel forward. Sometimes they have armor if they're burning meter, and so on.
Yeah.
And you start neutral jumping, because unless they're going for the anti-air one, they don't have a hitbox upward. And for whatever reason, like nobody in Grand Blue did this. like I was coaching people, I'm like, oh, how do I deal with the boot? Neutral jump. Not saying it's gonna work every time, of course, because if you keep neutral jumping like an idiot, they're gonna run in and DP you, right? But for whatever reason, 60%. Like they were not dealing with this. So in Grand Blue, I struggled with the recovery of moves. Like I have made videos where I reacted 5 frames after a visual cue, 5, not 15, not 20, and I was late.
Yeah.
So at that point, I started to discuss this with the community, and they were like, oh, you just have to press buttons instead of trying to whiff punish. I'm like, yeah, that's anime. It's literally what you do in anime, because you can keep the pressure, and the hitboxes are so big and they're so disattached from the body, right? If you have this long ass sword, that you're not gonna get whiff punish. And they're like, yeah, that's what you're gonna do. And I'm like, yeah, but I play La Diva.
Yeah, I don't. What am I gonna do?
like, what am I gonna do? Like,
I don't have a sword,
use my beard as a whip to increase my range. And don't get me wrong, she's super strong up close. She's a fucking nightmare up close. But it's the same thing as Dudley. Basically, you're playing Dudley. The problem is with Dudley, you get a whiff punish, you close the range, you do 60%, you get them into the corner. With La Diva, you can't do that because the hitboxes are placed so far away from the actual body that if you whiff punish into EX Lariat, she's not fast enough to punish you. So they crouch and punish you.
Yeah.
So, like, that's what I try to figure out. And I'm like, it's designed as a ground gameplay, but it plays like an anime game.
Yeah, I mean, if I've played all 3 of these games too. The Mortal Kombat example, I feel like I have the most. I can give the most feedback in regards to what you said as well, because I played like thousands of games of it.
A ton. Yeah.
Yes, but but the thing with Mortal Kombat is, and this is the same as every game, I guess. But playing online definitely breeds you bad habits. But
agreed.
Mortal Kombat especially, I feel like epitomizes this like it is the absolute top of this pyramid of wanting to make fighting games easier for the new generation. I mean, I agree with you completely about. I think Grand Blues probably does it the best in regards to lowering the barrier of skill and entry to you essentially eventually being a good player of the game.
Yes, at approach level, yes.
Yeah, at the absolute basic level, I think they've done the way they do simplified moves and all that sort of stuff. I think is really smart, right? Them's Fighting Herd is a little bit more technical, but ultimately, yeah, I mean, you can still play it very simply if you want to. But again, there is a massive barrier between, they don't give you anything in Them's Fighting Herd in the sense of, if you want to play it and you want to be Velvet over and just throw projectiles, or Oleander and just throw projectiles, you can. But there are ways around it, right? Especially because, like, when we played, I didn't know how strong the lasso of Arizona is. Like, you just kept getting me. I kept backdashing and you catch me 1,000 times. I was like, oh shit, okay. So I can't just backdash. I have to, and that's when the layers start to come in. I was like, right, well, in this case, I'm going to forward dash. Make you whiff, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like Mortal Kombat is the absolute epitome of a fighting game that wants to spoon feed you as much as possible. And it is everything that is wrong with modern day fighting games and how to approach it for new players. And the reason why I say that is, if you're looking at it from a perspective of a business, and we can get into this because this was going to be the next thing I was going to bring up anyway. If we're looking at this from a business perspective, as we've said, Mortal Kombat is arguably the second most popular fighting game, or top two. Should we say top two fighting games? That and Street Fighter, right?
I would say at the moment, Mortal Kombat may actually be bigger
on
a general public level.
Yeah, so we'll say arguably top two, if not top one, fighting game of all time. And we have a game, as you said. Hey, Callum! Bless you, brother. Thank you for the sub. I hope you're doing all right. I mean, I guess you can contribute in this as well, seeing as 99% of your videos are Mortal Kombat based. But Mortal Kombat 11 was designed because they saw how successful they were with Injustice Mobile and MKX Mobile, and they were like, we need to make our top tier AAA console fighting game more like these, because these are the games people play. And it's smart in the sense that they can see, because mobile gaming is a massive industry now. I don't know if it's bigger than console gaming, but it's huge. It's huge, right? And they're getting a big market share of that through their fighting game, their mobile fighting games. So the reason that they've seen that and they've gone, you know what, that's a good idea. Why don't we implement that in our fighting games, because we want people to play our fighting games too. So that's why you have meter that you don't have to earn. That's why you have 73 different types of wake up options. That's why we've spoken a lot about risk reward. That's why the risk reward on jump-ins is so high. The reward is so high for the jumper because you get anti-air 40 times in a row. The most you're going to get, maybe if they've got a good anti-air, is 30%, but a lot of characters don't actually even have that option to anti-air. So, it's been designed, and that's what frustrates me the most about it, is because it has been designed specifically for players who usually would give up. And I'm not saying that I don't want people to play these games, because the next point basically I want to get to is, without these changes, like doing the devil's advocate bit, without these changes, will people still play them? But it's the mechanics like that, like, fatal blow not going away, not costing meter, comes back after a couple of seconds even if it whiffs. Block stun being so massive because they don't want you to be punished when you overcommit for stuff. And you just see these changes and you think the only reason they could possibly put these in the game is because they want new players to not feel so punished.
Yeah, I wanna actually spend a second on the whole anti-air thing and risk reward. Scarlet has a 370, like 37% kind of BMB from standing 2, right?
Yeah.
That's a usual punish if they cannot break away and so on, recess into the corner, blah blah blah. If she gets a parry, like a flawless block, into up 2, she gives up 100 damage.
Yeah.
For whatever reason,
At the
I
cost
don't
of
know
a meter.
why. Like you had to pop 2 meters for 30% less reward, right? So it was not 30%, it's like 25% less reward. And also she gets less carry. Why? It's just why?
I know.
And that's like a technical input, which is not being rewarded at all.
No.
It might be just the Scarlet case, but
No, it's the same with everybody.
Funny.
If you up 2, if you do a flawless block up 2, it's you're getting maybe 40% of the damage, like 40% less damage on a combo than if you were to just, I don't know, because
like
this is my point.
you have to have a perfect block, like technically like a parry, right?
Yeah.
So there's already inherent risk. You blow in 2 meters that you could be using to extend combos, right?
Yeah.
1 meter to extend combo, 1 meter as a escape option, and you get rewarded less.
Yeah, I know.
It's almost like you're being punished for blocking. You're being punished for not going absolutely batshit crazy with the offense.
Well, that is 1000% the point. Is that they want you to feel like you said, right? MKX was a super oppressive game. You had your aliens and your characters that were just Aaron Blacks that would just get you in the corner, put down unblockable acid, and you just have to hold that shit. And if you didn't have a meter, a good armored reversal, then that's it. You literally just had to hold it, like you said, 50-50 GGs into next game. And the last thing they wanted was for this new mobile generation of fighting gamer to come into this game and feel, because Mortal Kombat 11 is the only fighting game where if you knock somebody down, you have less advantage than if you keep them standing. Like if you go for like a restand or something like that.
Unless you're playing Lancelot. Unless you're playing against Lancelot in GBVS.
Yeah, alright, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. But yes, but the thing with Mortal Kombat is every character has those options, right? You have every single character, regardless of who you pick. It's alright. Some reversals might be better than others, but every single character can forward roll, can back roll, can delayed wake up. There's 3 different types of delayed wake up. There's wake up buttons.
3, up 2.
Yeah, up 3, up 2. There's jump. There's
there's neutral duck if they go with a high.
Yeah, exactly. There's neutral duck. There's fatal blow. There's literally at least 15 different wake up options that you can do, and that was specifically put into the game because they don't want you to feel like you're overwhelmed. They don't want you to get knocked down. Like the old school fighting games, like GG, like the old school anime fighting games, or even Mortal Kombat. You'd get knocked down in the corner. Imagine a character like Joker. They put a box on your head. You can't do anything. There's no delayed wake up. You have to hold the pressure into whatever the next mix up is. And they knew that would make people not want to play it anymore. So
yeah, because they don't have to take accountability for their mistakes.
No.
I am fine to take the most tight and stupid 50-50 in the game if I have actually lost a neutral in a game where the neutral is well designed. That's why I like Street Fighter 4. I am fine with holding, Zangief Vortex or Gen Vortex with the unblockables if I've lost a neutral because I've lost a neutral. Not because like something is just so good that sets you into a 50-50 and then you have to hold the Oki.
Yeah, like Sub-Zero's 13-frame full-screen reversal into 50-50, and you can make it safe, and it's literally a guess. Especially online, you're not reacting to a 19-frame overhead unless you. It's no way it's a reaction. It's always a read. If you see the overhead, if you think you're going to overhead and you block it, it's because you read the overhead. Nobody's going to see a 19-frame overhead and block it. It's just not going to happen unless you're the Flash and you can slow down time.
Yeah, and I made a recent tweet about this situation where I said I made it at like 1 a.m. totally non-peak time because I don't care and so on. But I basically said, we unironically went from option select. Option select ruined the game for beginners, but this 50-50 is fuzzable for 2 frames. Please just block it. Please just practice. Yeah. It's gonna be fine. I'm like, what?
What? Why? Yeah, and that's the other side of things as well, is that it's not even just giving you more defensive options, it's making your offensive options, like we said with jump-ins, easier. So you can down to a guy, like I'm watching, like the game I'm watching now, right? I've got running in the background of the screen.
Yeah.
You see this Liu Kang, and you can see how often he's jumping, and I'm hitting him for 15% every jump. So I have to hit him. How many? My maths is so bad. What? So should we say 10 times? I need to enter him before he dies.
Yeah.
He only needs to get 2 jump-ins, and he's taken off 50% of my life. So
and take away from the jumping, 6 frames mid into plus forward, into plus pressure, into like 1,000 different options that you have to either guess or read. It's not even just the jumping. Is what they get after. How stupid are their options to keep the pressure on you?
Yeah, well, that is Mortal Kombat. That's why this Mortal Kombat game plus down pokes aren't that minus, so you can mash them over and over again because they didn't want people to feel like, oh, you know what? I can't press in between strings, and I think Mortal Kombat is indicative of like the absolute worst in regards to like making games accessible at the I can't even think of the phrase. At the other side of making it so that it's not fun for people that have played fighting games and have been fans of the series for years and years and years. But leading into my next point, which is why I was going to play the devil's advocate.
Yeah, sure.
As we've said before, we've lived the Dark Ages. We've been in that dark decade of no fighting games, right? Or like 1 or 2. Do you see an era of fighting games continuing without them making them more accessible? Mortal Kombat is the highest selling fighting game potentially of the last decade, right? And we've already said, hey, easy, Papa Masha, how you doing? We've said, like, we've both just went on, explaining why from a more advanced level of fighting game player, it's not a good fighting game, but it's the highest selling fighting game of this generation.
Yes. I will answer the question. I'm not deflecting, but I want to ask you because it's very, very important for this point. What does Mortal Kombat have that Street Fighter doesn't have, that Tekken doesn't have? What is your casual player in Street Fighter served with, your casual player in Tekken served with, and Mortal Kombat, your casual player in Mortal Kombat served with? What do you have that other games don't have?
Yeah, I mean, and I agree completely. So for those of you that don't know really the difference between these games, Mortal Kombat is, out of all the fighting games, arguably has the most, and it's not just for Mortal Kombat, it did it for Injustice and MKX2. Arguably since 9, actually, it's had the most single-player content, and it's got a really good story. Yeah, definitely. No, I see that completely. Like single-player content, the story mode is like the production values are insane. It's got towers, it's got arcade mode.
Yeah, it's
timed
events, rewards, unlockables, rare shit.
Yeah, which feeds into this mobile gaming. Which was I was saying before, the mobile gaming side. You play it. And Street Fighter 5 slow mode, yeah.
We talk about a lot how to
Cynical.
keep players that are competitive to keep playing the game. We talk almost zero how to keep the casual in the game, so they might discover that there is a competitive side.
But that's
or they might be interested. We do nothing as a community. Zero.
But that's the thing. Is
to help that transition.
They don't. Arguably, the developers, and again, I'm chatting squarely out my backside here, so please feel free to call me on it. But if we look at the trend of modern day fighting games, how do you, unless you make fighting games more accessible, and I don't mean accessible in terms of like for people who might not be unable to play, which I think is definitely something that companies need to work on more. But I mean accessible in terms of, I'm Joe Smith. I played Mortal Kombat when I was 10, and I want to play it again now. And I've seen that RoboCop's in it, and RoboCop's my favorite film, and I want to play it. Why would NetherRealm want to make the game more playable for me, James, who they know is going to buy it because I've bought every Mortal Kombat game since Mortal Kombat 2, or 1 even. Why do they have to cater the game for me if they know that the money they're going to get my money? They know they're going to get my money. right?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to buy it because I'm a fan of the franchise. Why do they need to cater that game for me as a fighting game player when they know they're going to get my money rather than catering it for, you know, Salt Killer 69 who's going to play it for the towers, for the story mode, for the unlockable content, and then go into ranked and just do what they've done against the AI, and it's going to work because that's how the game's designed against top players. Why design it for me instead of the mobile gamer?
It makes sense what you're saying. They shouldn't, because we are the niche market, right? We are the niche market. We are
Easy
not the ones
sequel.
that actually make the sales, right? We take every single FGC guys, right, from the beginner that plays fighting games at the very beginner level, and just hangs at the local, which they're fantastic. And to the top champion, right, Sonic Fox or whatever we want to throw a name in there, we might be 3 to 5% of the overall sale,
Mm-hmm.
right? 10% maybe if we're being super optimistic. The problem is, are you familiar on how arcades historically have changed from having video games to ticket resellers? It's because the the arcade, so to speak, industry started to see that the people that were there and all the time were not too many, so they wanted to involve more people. But these started to alienate that actual revenue, because there is a mass big revenue that is casual, and then you have your the one that's going to keep you afloat,
Yeah.
right? This was the case in arcades. The arcade people were the ones that would be like, I don't know, £10, £20, £30 a day, just doing their thing. But they were like maybe, I don't know, 10, 20 people, right, on a big arcades in a big city. And then you'd have, I don't know, 200, 300, 400 people, or people just, I don't know, walking the seaside that you wanted to get in there. How do you get them in? And they started doing things like, ticket resellers and very, very casual games, color games, dance games, big cars games,
Yeah.
as long as it was visual and colored and loud to get people in. And the thing started shifting to the point where, especially with the transition to home console, the hardcore people started not going to the thing anymore, because they didn't really love what the arcade was becoming. And you can draw a parallel there. At the same time, we are still ignoring the fact that there is next to no competition in fighting games, right? You have Capcom, you have Namco Bandai is called now, and NetherRealm, right? And then you have like Arxis with the anime game, but it's already niche. There
Mm-hmm.
is no anime game that is as big as this one's, right? Riot has announced that they're gonna get in fighting games at some point,
Yeah.
right? And you have no idea what Riot wants to do and how they want to do it. What if they throw, with their presence, with their community, a fighting game that is easy to play but also challenging and deep, and the fucking like one single player content that Mortal Kombat have thrown like 10 times?
Yeah.
How will that change the market? How will that caters to so many people? Like, imagine a League of Legends fighting game with an official, what's it called? Official trademark, officially licensed by Riot, that does these things well with the single player and the rollback net codes and everything that we ever wanted. And then they throw the money in on top, as Street Fighter 5 is doing. Suddenly, if you're a company that does fighting games, you're shaking in your boots, right?
Yeah.
And this is why I say you can only make change if you take stances. Like, I might be stupid. I might be, the guy that screams at windmills, but I refused to play Street Fighter 5 when I understood where they were going with it, and I haven't touched Street Fighter 5 since July 2016. I refuse to play, not to play, to buy content for Samurai Shodown. Samurai Shodown, once again, is my favorite game in the generation. But SNK has refused to fix all the problems of the game, has refused to acknowledge the community rage and the frustration. Like Samurai Shodown still has a scene in Europe where the game is like crashing every, I don't know, 2 minutes online play. We run events with these London fighters where we had to battle this, right? It's
Yeah.
not fun. But if nobody takes a stance, things are not going to change. And I might be the only idiot that is going to take stances for the next 20 years, but at least I know that I tried.
Well,
And I
see,
think we take so many things for granted. Take the CPT online thing right now. We're just talking like yesterday, right? It's
yeah.
a mess. But still, that's the way that Capcom chose for their Pro Tour to work because of COVID-19, of course, and so on. And you are in a situation where, as a top player, you can take stances. I absolutely hated that top players were all like, oh man, Street Fighter 5 is fantastic. Then they started losing their contracts. Then they started getting bans for personal reasons. And they're like, oh, you know what? It's not so good now. Oh, right. So I believe in like accountability and taking stances and being like, this is what we want. But I think I'm the only one.
Well, see,
Sorry.
it's funny you say that because C4 just made a good
No,
point
I'm
in
sorry,
chat.
sorry. One sec. I'm not condoning Riot morals. Fuck Riot. I'm not saying that Riot's going to be the savior because of their morals. I'm just looking at the chat. I was
Yeah.
just making the point of a competitor in the scene, regardless of morals. We can talk about morals and Riot for days. No, don't get me
Yeah,
started.
no,
But no,
but
no.
that's the thing. So firstly, yeah, Dragon Ball is big.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit more technical though than outside of like auto combos and stuff. It's a little bit more technical than a lot of the modern day, like the rest of the fighting games in the big three. I'd say it's if out of Tekken's probably the hardest, then
Mm-hmm.
Dragon Ball, then Street Fighter, then Mortal Kombat. I mean, you can agree or disagree with that, but I mean, in terms of if you want to get to a good level,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I mean, C4 made a good point. Companies selling fighting games to fighting game players is like selling Big Macs to vegans. Why are they going to listen to the
Yeah.
people that always find something to moan about? Now, I understand that point completely because, yeah, like we've said, to be fair, the most of what we've been talking about in regards to modern day fighting games in our examination is we don't enjoy them because we're older and we remember a time like we are the guys that shout at clouds.
Pepper Ridge Farm remembers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when we're older, we remember back in the day when we didn't have supers and we didn't have comeback mechanics, and you only had one wake up, which was block, and you had to hold that shit, and every game had 50-50s into. We all
Lol.
you and I remember that because we're a bit older, and I think a few people in chat do as well. But that's the point I'm trying to make now is that does that mean that we can take a stand. Like I've taken a stand. I'm not a massive fan. I like watching Street Fighter 5, but I don't play it because I don't enjoy it. Mortal Kombat, I play a bit more because I've sort of made my brand around it now. So I play it a bit more because that's what people, as a streamer, that's sort of what people expect me to play. And we can get into it as well because you made a point on Twitter recently about,
Yeah. Yeah.
when you don't play what people expect you to play, you definitely see a difference in
Yeah,
like
like
audience and
I have played fighting games pretty much non-stop on my stream, with like some very very short-lived exceptions since 2015. I chosen 1 week off of fighting games after making that article because I literally was not enjoying it, and I lost like 20 followers. I'm not
yeah.
kidding.
Well, that's I
Like
mean
in a week.
that's exactly the point. So you're playing these games now, but then how do we as a community of fighting game players, and I'm not using even one specific example here,
Hmm.
how do
Hmm.
we as outside of taking individual stands, how can we
Foster a
change?
change.
Yeah, how can we foster a change? Mortal Kombat 11, the absolute top players, everyone complains about the breakaway system. Everyone complains about anti-airs being useless. Everyone complains about fatal blows. But these are the top level players. They're getting paid to play it and will play it genuinely regardless of,
Hmm.
whatever happens, right?
Yeah.
So
Uh,
Jimmy Jones 69 Killer on PSN is going to
mhm.
buy every Mortal Kombat game, or at least the newest one that they see is easy to play, has their favorite. Oh, Terminator! I love Terminator. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
what can we do? What do you think, if there is anything, that will change the way. I mean, I'm just like I'm giving you this immortal
Okay.
question. Like, you fix this for everyone, Gill. Fix this for
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah.
Huh?
Fix it.
Fix
Fix
companies'
the kill.
attitude to this shit. But what can we even
No,
do?
well, my answer, unfortunately, is the non-popular one because I don't believe there is a short-term fix. This is what I also teach to people when they come in for coaching. People will ask you like the most open-end questions and expect you to fix for them situations like, how do I approach this character in this matchup? It's not a question of press this button or press that button. When you have to develop a whole thinking, right? A whole um, process around that, because I can't explain footsies to you. I can show you how to punish this single button at which range, but I cannot explain footsies to you. It's a process that we develop as you develop self-thinking, right? With fighting games, I think the main problem, once again, is that we're selling the wrong concept. We're selling the get good and beat the best player in the world in a week. And unfortunately, to be real, we have to sell the work a few years, hard, help, like ask for help, interact with people, admit that you're losing because of your like these all are hard concepts that all together will make average, no, I wouldn't say average players, but the average player in the sense of numbers want to stick in the scene. Not want to, but like stick in the scene.
Yeah.
If you tell me, right, that you can that I can be, I'm a new player, and you tell me you can beat Daigo in a week, do you think I'm not gonna try?
Yeah.
You think I'm not gonna play the game for like, I don't know, 3-4 weeks, whatever, then go to the next tournament, then maybe be lucky enough to be drafted with Daigo, be absolutely ruined, and stop, right? And this is not the situation of Daigo. Like Jimmy Salty John online is gonna body me, and he's a new player as well, right?
Yeah.
He might have a little bit more experience. So unfortunately, it's all like we have to get real. There is no short. Like I'm gonna be very very corny and quote Dudley, which is my favorite character in fighting games. My favorite quote of Dudley is, "There is no shortcut to perfection. Hard training is the only way." And
Yeah.
you can foster that in so many cool and creative ways, especially with the sense of community that we are developing now. But you are going to sell that message first, because that message is only sold to people already playing fighting games competitively. I'm not gonna tell you you're gonna be better than Sonic Fox in 2 weeks. Just come and get coached by me, right? First, because I'm a nobody in my Mortal game, in Mortal Kombat. I barely played the game, right? But say I was, I don't know, your average top 8 placing, that I hold some sort of reputation or whatever to make this statement believable.
Yeah.
You're still gonna get bodied by Sonic Fox in a week, right? Even with, I don't know, Scar's help, or I don't know,
Video
or
games, yo.
only be or Video Games Yo, all these like amazing players, Mirko, right? If Mirko Video Games Yo, all these guys train you for a week, you're still gonna lose to Sonic
Yeah.
Fox. They lose to Sonic Fox, and they've been doing it for years. So unfortunately, there is a big disconnect, and that's how you're gonna retain players on a competitive side. On a non-competitive side, you're gonna shit single player modes and help this transition in a way or another. That's the fix, in my opinion.
See, I agree. I agree, especially in I think it's a really good point you made that we're selling people on the wrong idea, because it's true. But again, that's how are you gonna encourage people? So a lot of people that play these games now, like, they don't play it like we do, where it becomes, it's essentially our job to play these games at the moment, right? Whether it's in a competitive environment, or a coaching environment, or an entertainment environment.
Yeah.
Our goal at the moment is to acquire, like, currency as a result of playing these games, right?
Mm-hmm. Well,
How are we gonna how do you get random man online to care about wanting to get better competitively if he only has like an hour in the evening to play, and he can play and fight, and get to demigod or god or elder god rank or whatever, and
Well,
excel.
I would have the perfect answer for this if we were in a generation before this. I'm not kidding. Like, this is gonna sound harsh, but this is what I would tell you: is develop fundamentals. I would tell you work on the fundamentals, because that's where everything starts, right? That's how you improve every single aspect of your game as a consequence. You can improve execution. Like, when I approach very hard concept, very open-ended concepts, I try and teach people from level 1 to level 100. Take a very quick example: anti-airing in Street Fighter 4, or in Street Fighter in general, with Ryu, right? Basic characters, basic concept. You have level 1, which is crouching heavy punch, right? Hold the lever down, press a button. Doesn't get any more simple than that. Or you have a DP, invincible anti-air design move, that requires execution. Or you have crouching medium kick to occupy a space horizontally in footsies, and shortcut into DP as a reaction for when they go airborne. Now you see that the levels are very far from each other, but you can teach people to just do crouching heavy punch, and they're going to start anti-airing. They're going to start to be introduced in that concept. Unfortunately, if I tell you develop fundamentals now, you're still gonna eat a 60% into super pressure and die off of it. So when I try to find solutions in this thing, I don't see them, because once you remove fundamentals, it's a scrambly game. Is the better execution or the better jumping placement wins.
But this is my thing. So C4's saying Papa's saying. So if we just go in chat, right? We're having like, this is good. So we're having like people like chime in. Good matchmaking to maintain competitive players. Definitely online is definitely a key thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can't remove online.
No.
Like, we're still sending the message that online doesn't matter. In 2020, we're still telling people online doesn't matter. Online is not how you play the game. We're in 2020. There's no more arcades. No, not every city has a local.
No.
Not every
When global
small
pandemics hit.
no, yeah, global pandemic. Like, and we're still saying, oh, online doesn't matter, because we have grown up with this. This is like our concept. This is how we justify losses. This is how we justify everything. And don't get me wrong, there is some truth in that, right? Like, take an example. I played Easyman, top Ryu player in Europe, one of the best players in Europe. He smoked me 10-3 online, right? We went to the mix-up Lyon for the major, fantastic stuff. I won 6-0 against him. So yes, there is truth. But if you extend this concept of online is not the way you play, developers are going to believe you.
Yeah.
Developers are not going to put rollback from reliable sources in your game, because it doesn't matter. Literally, we are telling them it doesn't matter. Only like a year ago, we started, oh, you know what? Maybe it does matter. Maybe give us good online and so on. So there's so many things to fix that is really hard to pinpoint it down to a single answer.
But the key thing that I want to try and, this will be the second to last point. But the key thing that I want to think of is, how do we get these casual players that just, the Mortal Kombat, generic Mortal Kombat player, right? Who mashes on hit, jumps 1,000 times, even though they've been anti-aired 999 times. The game mashes fatal blow, all this other stuff, like bad FGC and fighting game habits, right? How do we encourage them to want to learn to play well, or play properly, shall we say, to a point where developers then change their style back to,
How do you do that? It would be counterintuitive at the moment.
Well, this is the point. Yeah, that's the point. That's like what I was trying to. That's the thing that I want to try and obviously figure out. Is hard because we're just two dudes chatting on a podcast with a bunch of people watching, but that's the key thing that worries me, is how do we get away from this attitude of, well, we want to sell copies, so we want to make it easier for people to play, but then if you want to sell copies and you want to make it easier to play, everybody's going to make it easier to play to the point where you'll never make it. I mean, I'm not saying I want it to be like Guilty Gear, right, where every combo is like 17 seconds long and you need to do negative edge and, to the point where it's basically like a degree to do one combo. I'm not saying that I want all fighting games to do like that.
No. But at a certain point, your chess will become checkers and you're playing something different.
Yeah, but that's what Mortal Kombat is. And Mortal Kombat, as we've said, sells so well. What is to incentivize NetherRealm to make the next one not like this when it's sold, 1 million copies? How do we get...
There is no way.
Yeah.
There is no way.
Okay.
But
right,
at a certain point, then you're gonna... at a certain point, you're gonna realize that maybe the genre is not dictated by the competitive side. And either the competitive people are gonna step up and make their own studios, like somebody that actually plays the game,
like Skullgirls or
and I'm trying to
Killer Instinct.
Killer Instinct, exactly. Games that are solid and that things make sense. I mean, some things in Killer Instinct don't, but that's because the game is purposely balls to the wall, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I think that at some point, if you want to shift in perspective, you need to change the developers, because the businesses, they want to make money, and it's understandable. There's no getting around that, right? I've taken a business model in university, and the first thing they tell you is businesses need to make money. You can make money for different reasons. You can have your charities. You can make your socially good cause companies. You need to make money. So that's a good way to make money. Like the sales have been pretty damn decent. Then again, Street Fighter V had so many problems that didn't sell as good as the old ones in comparison for a long time, right? But you need to make money, so maybe it's not for us. Maybe we need to wait for some hardcore to develop fighting games to start actually making fighting games. And there's some interesting amateur projects, but
yeah, I mean, it's true. Like Fantasy Strike is one that Crypto Nick just brought up. Mm-hmm. Riot are gonna have their one. I mean, I don't know. The thing is, cynical. It's NRS games are they weren't always for casual players, because I mean, even Injustice 1 and even Injustice 2 at its highest level is not a game for casuals. I mean, there's a lot of characters like Firestorm and Starfire and all these characters that are, they will crush you if you're new and you don't know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know. It's like Gill said, that, ultimately these players. To be honest with you, I would rather, and this is the joke of it, right? Mm-hmm. And this is going to go into the last point, because we've been talking for a little while now. But
yeah, that's fine.
Ultimately, I would rather, and I know we've been talking about it and complaining to an extent, right? But I would rather have 100 different fighting games to choose to play, which are like this, than go back to that dark age where we didn't have any. Because especially in a time where, as you said, online is so important, it's not impossible. Like when I play sets against people in Fighting Herds, or if I play sets against people in Mortal Kombat, it's 1,000 times different to playing just like the standard online, right? Like Combat League, or when we did our first to 5, it was so much more different than just getting like gimmicked out because I don't know a matchup, or when I play against Shav or Papa or any one of those guys, or C4 and Grand Blue or whatever. It's so different to playing, just general online game and randoms and wanting to pull what little of my hair is left out. But I would still, but you do get the frustrating side, but I would still want fighting games for that side of it than to not have them at all. Which is the sad thing, is that I don't feel like what we'll end with. What do we like about the modern day fighting games? One thing that Papa said, which I really like, is that for the most part, tutorials these days in fighting games are super comprehensive. Whether or not anybody actually does them is another story. But
that's actually a funny episode that I had recently with Killer Instinct. As an advanced player, I absolutely hated the tutorial because I could not skip all the parts that for me were useless, like
jumping and walking.
what's a cross up, or what is, for example, how do you block highs and lows, right? And it took me like 2 hours past of this time to actually get to the system, right? And I'm like, okay, sure. Like, I understand why they're doing this. It's fine. We'll go through it. We've been through worse. And then I pick Kanra, which is a super, like...
setup heavy.
Play out of the system character, right? Setup heavy. And there's nothing. Literally nothing in the game. No trials, no videos, no general sense of the game. And the game changes the effect of the specials on hit. Yeah. Right? So how are you gonna figure out how to play the character? You give me like 2+ hours of tutorial with Jago for the system, and then you have something out of the system. But yeah, no, the tutorials are absolutely like super good to have. But at the same time, I've had super casual players that buy every fighting games because they like the genre, and they drop them because they don't enjoy the process of getting good, but they try it. And they told me that they dropped Killer Instinct because the tutorial was too long.
Yeah.
So I guess so. It was not just me, you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm like, so tutorials are great, and we definitely need to welcome people in the scene, but I think we're lacking into actually teaching and sitting with people, because there's a lot of press this button at this range, but there's not a lot of developing concepts that are a little bit larger.
So what's your takeaway if what do you like about modern day fighting games? Because we've said a lot about what we don't like.
What I like is tutorials for sure. It's fantastic that you don't get into games like Third Strike, where it's basically like arcade mode versus mode. Not even training if you're playing in arcades, and that's it. That's you, right? So there's like a lot of things like online options, like sitting in training mode while waiting for ranked, setting your first to 3, first to 5, first to 10. Like all these options are great, right? The fact that every single game now has a community, so not inside the game, but you can always find people to play. And it's not like me. Like, I was living in this shit old town, and nobody played fighting games aside from the arcade. So when the arcades died, I couldn't really play the game anymore. So there's a lot of these things. Gameplay wise, I'm trying to find things. Give me a sec. I like a little bit the sense of execution is not the ultimate point of everything, right?
Yeah.
So I like that a person is rewarded for the choice they make. But at the same time, I don't like that everything is taken away after. Like, your defensive options, execution should be there, but shouldn't be like playing Ash Crimson in KOF 13. Like, I spent 8 months to learn a BNB. I'm not kidding. That's how bad it was. And I'm a fighting game player. So, not a BNB, but it's like the basic conversion from install, right? Yeah. So I like that we are going towards the middle ground. Exactly, the middle ground. Please, let's find some middle ground, and let's actually help people learn fighting games. Not do this at that time and that's it. That's you, because that doesn't teach anything.
See, that's why I think Grand Blue is the best of that, and I mentioned it briefly before, because it has the simplified controls. I hate auto combos in the sense that I feel like they're the absolute worst. It's like giving somebody a bicycle and then the pedals pedal for you. It's like, what am I learning from just doing like Dragon Ball auto combos? Just obviously they have their uses in like BNBs and stuff, but giving somebody the option just to do a powerful move just because you want them to keep playing it. That just boggles my mind. But the reason why I love the way Grand Blue did it is because they do have the simplified moves and they do have auto combos, But if you just do auto combo into simplified move, you're not going to get as much as if you do like actual combos with the execution, and that's why I think it's good. But
you can teach a lot of things with auto combos as well in the way that Grand Blue did it. Because in Grand Blue, most of the time, the first 2 hits of the auto combo are either safe or plus. So you can use them almost as a frame trap or as a poke. You can start to develop little concepts along the way that it come just from mashing a button, right? Especially if somebody explains them to you. The problem that is inadvertent, right, that you don't see when introducing this concept out of goodwill because you want to involve people, is that Sonic Fox can anti-air on a button, right?
yeah,
Whether it's Sonic Fox, his Core in GBVS, all these like great players, Koji, all these like very good players, you're removing their execution, and they're already good with it. They're already amazing with it. They already crushed 99% of the players with it. You're making it easier for them to do this. So how do like there's always problems, and that's why I'm saying we're avoiding the actual core of the work, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, another thing is obviously the online, having the option to play online is. We never had that. I used to just play with my friends. I had 2 friends I used to play fighting games with, and if they didn't want to play, I had nobody to play fighting games with. So the fact that we've got as much as I crap on Mortal Kombat, and I do, the online isn't awful. Like, it's still playable, especially in Europe, right? If you're playing on European connections, for the most part, it's playable. Grand Blue in Europe, for the most part, it's playable. You know. Obviously, the Tekkens and the Street Fighters still aren't quite there yet, but hopefully with their next iteration and the situations, like you said before, saying online isn't relevant anymore isn't true. So fighting game companies are starting to see that, and hopefully with that in mind, we're starting to see SNK introducing good netcode to all their old games, which I'm guessing are just to test them.
Yeah.
So yeah, online is great. As you said, the building of communities is great. Stuff like Discord is great. Yeah, of course you can, Papa. Any question. Discord and stuff like that is amazing. But yeah, it's like you said, we're not answering the question of the game itself. And as we've both said, unfortunately, from our I'd say quite comprehensive examination of modern day fighting games, it doesn't look like that there is a solution to this, like dumbing down of the genre.
No.
If you wanna sell the game, you have to make it easier to play. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll go full circle. And like you said as well, there are choices. Skullgirls and Fantasy Strike and all these other Killer Instinct and. They might not have the best learning platforms built in, but obviously we have... Yeah, Mortal Kombat, bro. Mortal Kombat 11 is one of the best-selling fighting games of all time. Yeah. And it's the easiest to play. That's a direct correlation. There's obviously the single-player content adds to it, but... Yeah, it's increasing, but...
See... I want to answer a question that I've seen popped in the chat. It scrolled up, so I don't know what it is anymore. But somebody said, "Oh, but there's a lot of people that just want to do combos and they want to have fun like that. They want to do setups. They enjoy setups. They enjoy the creativity of setups. They enjoy pressure. They enjoy the offensive aspect." And I never said remove it. I said let defensive players have fun. Yeah. Because that was the initial point I made in Street Fighter 4 and in other old fighting games. You can have both. I'm not saying remove, like Street Fighter 3 as freaking unblockable. Like Urien is a character that came on Street Fighter 3. And now I haven't followed every single Street Fighter 5 setup because I don't watch the game. But Third Strike Urien is like super balls to the wall, setup heavy game, like character.
Yeah.
But you need to make it fun for everyone. Not just for offensive players. And if offensive players are not finding it fun because they're losing the neutral interaction, then they have to lose the neutral interaction. You can't just bypass things because they're not fun. Like,
But
to me,
that's what
it's
Mortal
more
Kombat
fun
does.
blocking. Blocking is well, I enjoy blocking, but I don't like being under pressure, especially if it's not warranted. I don't like being in a situation where I have to block a 50-50 because they hit a neutral skip and then plus on block, right? So
Yeah,
that's up to me to prevent that. But
yeah,
what I'm saying is design a game where everyone can have fun. Because
yeah,
at the moment with new fighting games, in my opinion, is not the case.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think they will make a difference. I don't think they will make it easier to play sorry, I don't think they're ever gonna uneasify it. And but yeah, I agree with you. If there was a way to get a middle ground,
Mhm.
do players buy it because it was easy? Yeah, I mean, if you were to look at a game, if you were a fighting game player, I mean, obviously we don't have the statistics, but if you're a fighting game, if you are a fan of fighting games, but you weren't necessarily, I mean, like look at the new Guilty Gear, for example. Say you're a fan of Guilty Gear, but you just keep getting rinsed every time you play it because you don't have the execution and everyone's blah blah blah, so much better than you. They've made this new Guilty Gear in mind for that because they've taken out. It seems like they've taken out some of the execution. It seems like they've taken out some of the longer combos. They've added wall breaks to prevent people from getting comboed for ages. So yeah, I mean, they are going to keep making games easier because they want casual people to buy them, and they want people that would not have or maybe have tried an old game and they tried the old Guilty Gear, they didn't like it because it was too hard, and now they want to play the new Guilty Gear because it looks easier. So I think that you have to think that's the reason why they are making it easier, because they want people to buy it, right? Otherwise, why would they make it easier? They would
Yeah,
just have
yeah.
good single player content and then keep it as difficult as it used to be.
I'm seeing situational damage question is like, oh yeah, but if you want to play zoning, you're not going to play Mortal Kombat X, right? And that makes sense. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't play the game because it doesn't reward it. But what I'm asking you is, which game after Street Fighter 4 rewards defensive, collective, reactive play? Do you think rewards that as a main approach to the game? Because this is why I'm disillusioned with new games. I can't find one.
Yeah.
Like that's what it's not about complaining just for complaining, because if I had a game that did that overall, where defense is at least as good as offense, I would not be disillusioned with fighting games. Also, Papa Master has asked if you think you're good at your main fighting game, and how many hours do you have in your main fighting game? Is this for me or for
I guess for both.
Sodium Jim?
I mean, I'll answer quickly first because my answers are short. Do I think I'm good at my main fighting game? No, and it's Mortal Kombat 11. And how many hours you have in your main fighting game? A lot. A lot, a lot, a lot. So,
Okay.
yeah.
In my case, do I think I'm good at my main fighting game? I'll start by answering that I don't have a main fighting game. The game I have poured most hours in are Street Fighter 3 and Street Fighter 4. I made some decent results, but I will answer that is not the point. It's not the point. Like, what I think generally why I play fighting games is not to say I'm good, I'm bad, I can beat this, I can beat this guy or that guy. It's because I want to enjoy the process as a whole. I don't have an end goal that is not learning. I will be playing fighting games maybe like in 20 years and still want to be learning. I'm satisfied with my level in those two games. I could be doing much, much better, and I'm striving to do that as well. But I play other 18 games on the side because I enjoy the process. How many hours do I have in, say, I don't know about Street Fighter 3 because I played that game for like years of my life, 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I've
On
probably
Street
got
Fighter
the same.
4, I'm for sure to surpass like 2K hours. Like, for sure. But probably in Street Fighter 3 I have more. But it's not the hours that matter. Like, if I had picked up Mortal Kombat without having played, I played like less than 3 weeks, no, less than 2 months, sorry, of Mortal Kombat X, and I never played Mortal Kombat before. I made top 10 with Scarlet of all characters. It's not the hours. That's why I'm saying that the solution is not press this button at that range. Is developing the self-thinking and the self-analyzing mindset to get you forward. And it doesn't matter what you play, because everything else is execution and applying concepts. But like generally, you're not gonna get good at fighting games because you press this button at that range. There's so much more, and that's what we're diluting it to.
I think C4. I think firstly, I agree with you, and secondly, I think what Gill means C4 is that, especially in modern day fighting games, the emphasis is. I mean, Gill always has the mechanic of if you backdash too much, you get a negative penalty, right? It's encouraging you to be offensive, but you can be offensive by being defensive. So like setting stuff up.
In GBVS, you build mirror by walking forward. Not pressing buttons, not having them block, not setting them in block stun, in each stun, getting damage, getting cheap damage, getting frame advantage, walking. You walk forward, you get damage, you get mirror. You walk back, you don't.
Yeah, I mean,
it's obvious what they want, right?
Yeah, I mean that is I agree, that is indicative of how modern fighting games, maybe not so much Street Fighter 5, but then even Street Fighter 5, every character
Street Fighter 5 actively punishes you for blocking. Like grey damage is only Street Fighter 5. It's a new concept that is designed to punish you for blocking, because you get added damage once you get touched if you have been blocking before that. In other games, it's just cheap damage, like for specials.
I think maybe Killer Instinct is probably the only one where actual like characters like Glacius and Ken Ra are like viable, and they work in a way around the mechanics of the game that that you. But
that's a Street Fighter 4 era game.
Yeah,
it didn't come after Street Fighter 4. It was it happened at the same time Street Fighter 4 was a thing. That's what people want. Look at the 8 people get for playing lame. That's true.
No, it's true. I agree.
Yeah, but why is that? Why do we say
but that's the other side
offense is more fun than defense and is more easy to understand? Our most famous moment in the fighting game community is a defensive moment. Our second most talked about moment when it happened is a defensive moment. Like the Evil Moment 37 parry is the first one. The Goichi against Sonic Fox 30-second blocking is hype as fuck. It's a defensive moment. It's because it's less immediate. We can agree on that.
But that's the thing.
To understand. But that's always like the culture of short reward. And we're applying it to a genre when you need the hard work. So it's never going to work.
No. And that's the thing. Hey, bless you, Pilko. Yeah, that's the thing, but that is going into a whole other thing, which I think we can even do a whole podcast on, is the difference between playing a competitive fighting game and making it spectator friendly, shall we say, in quotation marks.
Absolutely.
So actually, maybe we'll talk about that next time. We'll save that for now, but that is definitely a big indicator as to why fighting games aren't more defensive based. Because I mean, even in Mortal Kombat, you can have super defensive players like Dragon and Dizzy, and you just see in chat, I mean, NRS chat isn't particularly pleasant at the best of times, but you see in chat, effing spammer, like someone like Foxy, who just has distilled the game down into grab or throw. You know, you see that poke or throw. You see people like, oh, throw spammer, this spammer, that spammer, you know, and then it's the vocal minority that, especially when it comes to competitive play, I think that that are part of the reason why defensive play isn't as celebrated as it used to be. Like characters like Deadshot as well. Chris G, yeah, exactly. Chris G's a perfect Moridoom and Hungry Box. You know, getting death threats and stuff.
Chris G would deserve Chris G, and the change of UMVC3 would deserve another podcast on itself.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
to me, I will tell you straight up, UMVC3 is the most fun fighting game I've ever watched that I don't play.
Yeah,
I absolutely refuse to play. I call them circus games, but they're called hyper fighters, right? I call them circus game because if you ever been at the circus, you see all the exhibitions, and then at the end they all come out right? They're all doing their thing. You can't follow anything, but it's loud, it's colorful, and there's things happening on the screen, and you laugh, and you're like, "What the fuck is going on?" That's, to me, is Marvel, right? And it's super fun to watch Marvel because you have no idea. Even when you like understand the game, sometimes you're like, "What the fuck was that? How did I lose that interaction? How did he go here? Where was he supposed to block?" There's like sensory overload of things. But as a player, I would hate to play Hyper Fighters. I tried the Infinite because it was gifted to me by Capcom for like a few weeks, and then we went in Manchester, and what's it called? Faisal Dante, a great Scottish player of Hyper Fighters, started doing his thing with Dante Dormammu and locking like
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think it was
that was a dirty
what's it
team.
called? Spartan Throne. I think it was that the day in the exhibition, and he locked him for like literally 40 in real life seconds into chip and killed him. And I'm like, I never want to be in that position as a defender. I'm dropping the game right now.
Yeah,
literally how it happened.
that
So,
was that stuff like that is a very extreme, but relevant. I mean, recent example, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite isn't that old. It's just it died almost immediately. But yeah, we'll I think we'll knock that on the head there because we've been talking for almost 2 hours now. So we're definitely gonna end up going into we can talk about fighting game as a spectator sport. In fact, maybe that'll be the next thing. We can get a couple of people on as well to have it like more of a group discussion. But Gill, thank you so much for sitting with me and chatting and moaning with me and extrapolating the goodness for the last 2 hours. Please, would you plug all of your stuff in chat so people know where to see you?
Okay. So, well, I am at Gillstolemyride on Twitter if you want to follow. I don't really rumble that much on Twitter. Like, I rumble sometimes, but it's not really about rumbling the Twitter. Mostly it's like human rights and fighting games. So if you're into that, follow me. As mentioned, I stream and I am a coach as well. I do free coaching for anybody that asks in pretty much any fighting game. Even stuff that I don't play, I can give you general concepts of developing your own thinking pretty much. From today for this week, maybe next week as well, if it works well, I'm analyzing tournaments. So I will have a full week of tournament analysis as a kind of a coaching perspective. So if you want, you can watch that at hold on, twitch.tv/dfg Treehouse. If it looks scammy, I have a Sodium Gin on auto host and on my desktop of suggested streamers, so it's really kind to me.
Yeah, that's my pleasure.
But yeah, so I'm going to analyze all the tournaments. I got permission from Capcom, so we're doing all the.
That's amazing.
2014 and 2015 Capcom Pro Tour. Yeah, they've been really nice to me. I was not expecting getting permission, but I asked and that worked. And I'm also doing some Mortal Kombat, GBVS, and some show tournament analysis. So I'm gonna look at Lockdown Throwdown, Unite and Fight, country league, like they're playing that European league, and some show we're doing our monthly tournaments analysis as well. So yeah, just follow that, I guess, and that's it.
And your blog as well, which I've just put in chat.
Yeah, you can call the blog, so I don't have to link it. But yeah, thanks really a lot for having me. I hope this is like not sounding as super negative, because I know that a lot of people, I'm very vocal about what I think, but at the same time I have a fucking insane passion for fighting games. Like, this has been what I've been doing for the last 20 years. So I'm not just the guy that moans. I actually play fighting games, and I play a lot of shit.
I think that's important, is to have we're coming from a place of love. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
We don't want fighting games to fail. We don't want fighting games to turn into like this weird elitist, dystopia where it's only the top one, like Sonic Fox said, it's only the 1% that play it because, only they've got the execution and the reactions. That's not what I want at all.
Fuck that.
What I want, or what we both want, is just, if we can, just to try and find a balance of being accessible to new players, but at the same time being deep enough for the older players to feel rewarded and not like they're getting cheaped out. So,
Also, shout outs to Cynical because
oh yeah,
he's gonna be mad at me because I didn't mention. Yeah, Cynical and Moss. They've been doing a lot of work for the GBVS scene. Chai Benji has been doing a lot
oh
of work for
Benji,
the
yeah.
GBVS scene. Sodium Jim
Situational
is
damage.
commentating different times, for different events. I've helped as well in a way or another. So shout outs to them.
Yeah,
I
C4
I
as
end
well.
up not enjoying the game right now. Hopefully things will change. They change some things. I don't have a lot of hope, but yeah, they've done a lot of work, and I'm not proud of forgetting about mentioning him. I'm sorry, Cynical.
No, I mean the good thing about these dudes as well is they're all promoting. You know how we're saying about these games that might not be as supported, and that the good fighting games that we like. These are the people that are the ones that are supporting them, like Cynical and Benji and C4, and if you wanna watch a BlazBlue tournament, um,
Yes, Gibbs
Gibbs
does it.
has been doing that. If you want to watch,
Awakening the Chaos as well.
yeah, and Melty Bloods, Benji's been doing that. So
Mhm.
these
Yeah.
guys are the people. Gill as well always does like crazy new fighting games, especially the old school SNK stuff.
Street of Rage 4.
Yeah,
Maybe they'll patch it and we'll have battle mode. I still believe.
Streets of Rage 4, but you do stuff like Garrow as well and King
Mhm.
of Fighters. If you're an old school King of Fighters fan and you want to learn, join his Discord because he's got tons of Discords, for all the different content. So
Mhm.
please make sure you join. Well, I'll end it on this note. That is one. We've already said it as well, but that is one of the most beautiful things about playing fighting games in 2020 is you're at least going to find one other guy that plays the game that you like. So,
Yes.
we're not trapped in the arcades anymore or trapped in our hat. Like now, imagine being in Corona times and not having online. Fighting games would be dead. You couldn't play it.
Yeah,
So,
it would be. It would be absolutely.
yeah, thank you very much again, Gil. Thank you again, everybody, for watching. This will be going up on my YouTube later on this afternoon. Yeah, bless you, C4. Thank you for chiming in as well, because I definitely want to get you on as well. When we were talking about competitive fighting games and their competitive being, it's a bit seeing as you stream so much, the difference between defensive and offensive and how that affects fighting game spectator stuff. We'll get Gil back. We'll get like 3 or 4 people and turn it into a round table. But yeah, that's all from me for now. I might play a bit of Mortal Kombat actually, seeing as we've been talking about it. And my PlayStation still isn't set up. I have to install everything because it died. But yeah, make sure you follow Gil and everything. Thank you again, Gil. And I'll catch you
Okay.
guys later.
Bye bye.